This podcast is brought to you by Most Valuable Podcasts, leading the league in podcasting entertainment.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. This is Fast Break Podcast. I'm your host, Sean Anderson, and alongside me is no one, as usual. Ricky and Dave are in VidCon in California, so I'm doing a solo podcast after a 4-hour live stream. It was fun having everyone in there talking about the draft. My voice goes at any point. That's because I've been talking for 4 straight hours. But today is going to be a fun podcast. We're doing post-draft reaction. I have my NBA draft shirt on. I will say one thing. I kept seeing Luka Doncic, and maybe I saw a little bit of me in him. You know, if you think I look like Luka. But if you're watching on YouTube, you see my bad shirt. If you're listening on Blog Talk Radio, iTunes, Stitcher, any of the podcast servicing, welcome. Hopefully I can entertain you for the next couple minutes. It's probably going to be longer than a minute, probably running towards an hour. But on this podcast today, we're going to be talking about the best and worst picks. We're going to be talking about DeAndre Ayton and the Suns draft. One of the best drafts I've seen in a while out of Ryan McDonough. I'm glad I was singing his praises before this draft. We're going to be talking about Luka Doncic to the Mavs, how he fits. We're going to be talking about Mo Bamba and the Magic. We're going to be talking about the Bulls because we're in Chicago. And finally, we're going to wrap it up with everyone's favorite subject. Everyone's enamored with this kid, Michael Porter Jr. Before we jump in, though, don't forget to check out mostvaluablepodcast.com to really not miss out on anything we're posting. If you want to see articles, videos, full podcasts, head over to mostvaluablepodcast.com. Then, if you do want to help support us, check out patreon.com/mostvaluablepodcast. If you want to be on a podcast, you want monthly content that isn't allowed to everybody, go check out patreon.com/mostvaluablepodcast. If you want to maybe help upgrade the set, clearly this locker is doing some wonders here. Really sets the vibe. But if you do want to help us maybe upgrade the set, that's where the Patreon money will go as well. And then finally, if you're listening on iTunes, please do not forget to rate us 5 stars over there. Maybe write a nice little comment over there, but we really appreciate it. It helps us grow. If you're not able to give us, if you're not able to donate through Patreon, and you really like what we're doing and you like supporting us. But let's jump into the NBA draft talk because I'm tired. I want to get through this, but I'm also excited and I'm amped because this was a crazy NBA draft. And I think the weirdest thing about the draft so far and really watching it was I didn't see a lot of bad picks. So the worst picks are kind of going to be nitpicking. But I consistently saw the pick, and maybe it's just because we did so many mocks, we kind of saw the layout, and I saw what was happening, and I was like, all right, I like that player, I like that fit. There weren't too many reaches. I mean, there wasn't any Georgios Papagiannis, where the Kings took him at 13. There wasn't anything crazy. I mean, we kind of expected all these players to go where they went. The biggest thing was Michael Porter Jr. So let's talk about one of the best picks in this draft, and it's Michael Porter Jr. going to the Nuggets. Now, here's the thing. And I'll talk about this in the Bulls segment. I'll talk about this even in the MPJ segment itself. But to keep it brief, the Bulls had the book on the kid. They knew every injury. He wanted to go to the Bulls. He gave everything to the Bulls. First off, the doctors examined him. He gave him all his medical info. The agent gave him all his medical info, according to Woj. And 13 teams passed on him. That is a major red flag right there for every team, even the Nuggets fans. Major red flag that there must be something crucially wrong with Michael Porter Jr. and his back if he is falling this low. However, the Nuggets had the ability to take this chance. We consistently talked about the Nuggets possibly trading back, possibly moving back, possibly taking that Kenneth Furry contract and moving it away. But instead of moving that Kenneth Furry contract, they got Michael Porter Jr. And this is a team that I believe is going to be a playoff team next year. Maybe Minnesota falls out because they're really not gelling right now. Cat hates Jimmy Butler and Cat hates Tibbs. Wiggins hates both of them, and Wiggins and Jimmy Butler hates Wiggins and Cat. And this might be a team that just falls apart and crumbles. And the Nuggets, again, they were 1 game away from making the playoffs. They are so close, and if Michael Porter Jr. hits, they're a playoff team. If he doesn't, they're a playoff team. This team is good. They had the ability to take this risk. And it's kind of a blessing now looking back because they would have gotten smoked by the Warriors in the first round. We all know this. They would have gotten murdered by the Warriors. And instead of playing the Warriors, they get the 14th pick and they get Michael Porter Jr., who I think is the biggest steal of this draft because we look at him and he's the number 1 player rated out of high school. And yes, his back is bad. We have to assume that. That has to be the assumption if he fell all the way to 14. But this kid has the ability and has the ceiling of a superstar. Now, do I think it's, for sure certain? No. And I think this lowers his floor massively. I think him falling to 14 lowers his floor. He might not be a guy that plays this year. He might not be a guy that plays for a while. He might not be a guy that consistently plays 70 games even. But if he's able to hit that potential, the biggest need for the Nuggets was a three. I mean, you have Wilson Chandler's contract coming up. They got rid of Danilo Gallinari. They sent him off to the Clippers. They needed a three. And Michael Porter Jr. might be the best three in this draft if he is healthy and his athleticism is able to rebound. But if he's not healthy, he's most likely a four. And taking Paul Millsap, who really works inside the arc and is really great defensively, and pairing that with a great shooter who can stretch the floor and possibly be a really dynamic stretch, a stretch four in the NBA, could be massive for the Nuggets. And having Jokic, having Jamal Murray, having Gary Harris, this could be the building of a super team, honestly, because I think Jamal Murray is a fantastic shooter. I think he's absolutely underrated. Nikola Jokic is one of the best centers in the league. And if Michael Porter Jr. hits his ceiling, then you have a big three right there in Denver. And Michael Porter Jr. is costing you less for a lot of years. You still have Jamal Murray locked up. And right now the Nuggets are trying to free cap space to lock up Jokic long term. I mean, they can accept his player option and still keep him around this year. But the play, and I talked about this beginning of the season, was they might decline his option now so he costs less now instead of waiting one more year, the max going up. Because you can attack now, sign Jokic for the same amount of years. I mean, you're going to have him for 1 year less, but that's also going to be 5 cheaper years for Denver. Then you're finally going to have Paul Millsap's contract when it comes up. Denver was in the best spot to take Michael Porter Jr. If it fails, oh well, you're still a playoff team in my mind. If it hits, you have a future 4 or a future 3 that can be a star. I mean, there's no way to look at this and say the Nuggets lost, because you can look at the Bulls and possibly saying, all right, this is a rebuilding team. It would be dangerous for us to take Michael Porter Jr. with his injury concerns. You can look at the Knicks and be like, all right, we need a star, but again, we are a rebuilding team. We can't miss out on this. And we have a guy in Kevin Knox who has a really high floor, a fairly low ceiling. He's going to be a project. It's going to take time, but he doesn't have that injury concern. The Nuggets have the ability to take that risk on Michael Porter Jr. and his injury concerns. And I think this was a fantastic pick for the Nuggets. I think this is, again, it's boom or bust. Michael Porter Jr., you should be worried about his back, but you can take the time to let him heal, make sure he's 100%, and then bring him in very slowly. And he might not be a guy, he might be redshirted. We've talked about this before. It's been mentioned before. He might be a guy that gets redshirted. But if he's able to come back from this injury, we're going to be looking back at this 2018 draft and be like, how did this kid fall this far, injury or not? Now, that might piss off Bulls fans, that might piss off Knicks fans, Sixers fans, et cetera, Clippers fans. But with those teams, they're in different situations. Maybe not the Clippers because they had 2 picks, but the Nuggets had the ability to take this risk because they already have their future kind of set up. They have Gary Harris, great too. They have Jamal Murray, who is a really dynamic shooter. They have Nikola Jokic, who is one of the best big men in the league. They have Paul Millsap, who's a veteran 4. They have a fairly deep bench. They have Wilson Chandler. I think this team, again, was in the right position, and I love this pick for the Nuggets. And the Nuggets, again, if they are able to hit on this pick, the rich get richer, and this team turns from a playoff team to possibly a super team. And that's building through the draft right there. Love it from the Nuggets. Next pick that I love, you knew this was coming. If we're talking about Michael Porter Jr., if we're talking about my number 1 player before the start of the season, we got to talk about Dave's number 1 player from the start of the season, and then ultimately my number 1 player going into this draft, and Luka Doncic. The Dallas Mavericks hit it out of the ballpark. We talk about Rick Carlisle. We talk about how great a coach he is. We're talking about Dirk Nowitzki, one of the best international players of all time. And now we look at Luka Doncic, who has the potential to be maybe not the best international player of all time, because Dirk's pretty damn good. And I'm talking guys that didn't play college in the U.S., not guys who were born overseas. Like Ben Simmons, again, he's from Australia, doesn't count. Hakeem doesn't count, played in college. But guys, strictly guys that were from an international team. Luka could be possibly the second best player in international history, and you have the best international player in history in Dirk to come over. And we saw how big of a star Dirk was. I had a Dirk jersey. I was a massive Dirk Nowitzki fan. Everyone wanted to shoot like Dirk. He was a big man, hit a ton of threes. He knows how to take his game from an international standpoint and bring it into the NBA, and he was massively successful in it. He's going to be able to teach Luka Doncic how to do that. And one thing with Rick Carlisle is his system works well with a lot of ball handlers. And you have Dennis Smith Jr., who was a fantastic rookie last year, massively athletic, and can handle the ball himself. at your 1. Then at your 2, you possibly have Wes Matthews, who is a really good three-point shooter, and he's a good fifth option. He can play some decent defense. He's a guy that can shoot threes from the outside. He's a typical NBA 2. Then at your 3 for Luka Doncic, he can be that secondary ball handler, or he can even be that primary ball handler if you want to work Dennis Smith in off cuts, if you want to work him on back screens, because he's a guy that with his athleticism, he's going to beat guys in isolation. He's going to beat guys, especially one-on-one coming off screens. And if you're switching him where, you're able to get him run around screens and you're able to get him onto a big man or a 4 and he's able to blow by him. I mean, Dennis Smith Jr.'s best assets is his athleticism, and getting him out in space, which will be created by a ball handler by Luka, will be absolutely fantastic and beneficial. And even Luka himself, some people say, oh, he only shot 31% from 3 overseas. But you look at his shot, and it's what you want. It's a textbook shot from Luka Doncic. He has the form. He has the ability to hit from the outside. It's not consistent yet, but the kid's 19 years old. And he's also one of the most accomplished players in European history. So I look at Luka Doncic. This was an absolute steal. And some people are like, all right, you gave up the 2019 pick, the first round, the Mavericks did, but also that's protected. And I haven't gotten clarification on the protection yet, but I'm assuming it's top 3, top 5, top 10. If it's top 10, it's an absolute steal because you're not going to be giving up, if your team sucks, you're not going to be giving up too much. And one thing the guys in the live stream brought up was, what if they go out and get a guy like Julius Randle? What if they go out and get a guy like Boogie Cousins and take that opportunity? Could you imagine Dennis Smith Jr., Wes Matthews, Luka Doncic, Harrison Barnes, and then Dirk Nowitzki? Or, let's sub out Wes Matthews. Let's move Luka to the 2 if we do sign Boogie Cousins or Julius Randle. We put DSJ at the 1, Luka at the 2, Harrison Barnes at the 3, Dirk at the 4, and then Barnes at the 3, Dirk at the 4, and then at the 5 you have Boogie or Julius Randle and play some small ball 5. That's a disgusting lineup. And they have a fairly decent bench. JJ Barea on that bench. Powell was pretty good off the bench last year. So this is a Dallas Mavericks team that if they hit in free agency, if they take another shot in Boogie Cousins and kind of offer him more money than the Pelicans can offer and kind of put the pressure on them to, match it or at least, be able to give him what he wants, they're able to give Boogie what he wants, and Boogie comes there. We know how dynamic Boogie can be, and you could be looking at a big 3 of Luka Doncic, DSJ, and Boogie, and then you look at 2 guys in Dirk Nowitzki, who's a Hall of Famer, and Harrison Barnes, who's pretty damn good in his own right, and really make some noise and possibly take this team from the 5th team in the NBA draft all the way to the playoffs. So I look at this Luka trade, and I don't think you're missing out. I think this is exactly what the Mavericks needed. Love the pick for the Mavericks. Next pick that I love, there's a couple. Lonnie Walker, I'll throw his name out there. So I'm probably not going to be devoting my own segment to him, but Lonnie Walker for the Spurs, long, lengthy. He's going to be able to attack, and that's going to be something that's going to be consistent with him. And one thing that Kawhi was able to do early in his career was attack. Then he developed a shot. Not Luka Doncic, but Lonnie Walker might be able to do that and kind of maybe turn into the next Kawhi Leonard. Not saying that's going to happen, but again, Kawhi Leonard was, I think, 14th pick in his draft, and Lonnie Walker at 18 has the length, has the quickness, has the athleticism. Maybe he doesn't have that still, same defensive mentality as Kawhi Leonard. He doesn't, right, coming out of college, but he's a better scorer than Kawhi was coming out of college, and he does play the guard instead of, the 3, but this could be a very sneaky pick, and the fact that the Spurs got him at this spot is insane. And let's look at the luck they've had in the draft. Having DeJounte Murray fall to them when they did. DeJounte Murray looks like one of the best defensive guards in the league. And pairing that next to Lonnie Walker's length and athleticism and possibly being able to mold him into a great defender, you might be looking at one of the best young defensive backcourts in the NBA. And, Pop, we're talking about him might retire. And, his time might be coming up, especially with Kawhi possibly leaving, but he's going to have the ability for probably the next 3 years, because I expect him to coach for at least 3 more years, 2 or maybe even 2, because I think some people are saying 2020. But for the next 2 years to be able to take DeJounte Murray and take Lonnie Walker and possibly leave the Spurs with, you had Tony Parker, you had Manu Ginobili, possibly the next 2 guys, next 2 great guards to take over for San Antonio. Now, it's going to be dependent on what they do with Kawhi, but Pop, if he's able to bring back Kawhi, you're looking at a Spurs team that, in my mind, is upgraded, because you're going to have DeJounte Murray, you're going to have Lonnie Walker, you're still going to have Tony Parker, you're still going to have Manu most likely, you're still going to have Kawhi Leonard, you're still going to have Paul Gasol, you're still going to have LaMarcus Aldridge, And if those guys are able to mesh, I know it's going to be tough with Kawhi, being pissed off at Tony Parker and Manu Ginobili, but if Kawhi's able to get over that and he realizes that he really doesn't have a way out and the Spurs aren't going to trade him, and he plays in to try to play up and make sure that he can get that contract because he obviously missed last year, for the Lakers, if he wants to get a max from the Lakers, he might want to buy in, and this Spurs team could be dangerous because they're long, they're quick, they're athletic, and they don't really, the Warriors don't have an answer for LaMarcus Aldridge down low or Paul Gasol. So they have the length to guard Klay Thompson, Steph Curry, and Kevin Durant. Now, I don't know if they have the skill yet, but they have the length, and they have at least the kind of cookings of a team that could possibly pull an upset if Kawhi Leonard stays. I love the pick. I'm glad that Lonnie Walker fell to him, at least for San Antonio fans, because I know it's been bleak for you so far. Josh Okogie, I love that fit for Minnesota at 20. He has athleticism. He has the ability to shoot, I think, at the 2 guard. That's going to be a really nice spot for him to grow and develop. And I was looking at his tape and watching him a little bit more, and I think he could possibly become a guard Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler's picked 30th overall. Okogie picked 20th. He worked with Tom Thibodeau, going to be drafted by Tibbs. He has the ability to shoot from the outside. He's long, he's athletic, he's quick, and he might be a plus defender in the NBA. He might be a guy that, again, this might be Tibbs' next project, and he has the inner workings like Jimmy Butler did. And I really love Okogie's athleticism. I love his length, and I love his ability to shoot the ball and score. And he proved that at Georgia Tech against ACC opponents. I think he will be able to do that, especially in a limited role in Minnesota, at least start. But if they get rid of Andrew Wiggins, that role grows bigger. Let's look at Jimmy Butler. Derrick Rose goes out, his role gets bigger. There was moments and places for these guys to grow and really develop, and that's kind of, there's cracks in that Minnesota team that might lead to Okogie developing into a star of his own right. Love that Okogie pick. He's a sleeper. Finally, last great picks that I do want to mention. There's 3 of them, and they're 3 of my favorite players in this draft, and they all went to the Phoenix Suns. DeAndre Ayton, Mikal Bridges, and Eli Okubo. What a draft from fucking McDonough. An absolutely perfect draft if you're a Phoenix Suns fan. You got a backup point guard, possibly a point guard that could be your future point guard. He's a great passer. He's a great shooter. Pairing that with Devin Booker, holy shit. You look at DeAndre Ayton, a guy that's going to be a physical force down low at the 5, and you're still going to be able to keep Dragan Bender out at the 4, and then you get one of the most ready 3-and-D players in the draft right now in Mikal Bridges, and pairing him with Josh Jackson is absolutely disgusting. These two might develop into the best defensive pair of wings in the NBA. They're that good. They have that ability. Josh Jackson was a 4th pick, and yes, he had a slow start at the season, but damn, did he not end the season on fire. He was great. He showed that athleticism. He showed that length. And then pairing that with Mikal Bridges, who already has a shot, who doesn't need to develop a shot like Josh Jackson. Josh Jackson needs to find a more consistent shot. Mikal Bridges doesn't need to do that. And looking at that lineup now, I think it's going to be Booker at the 1. I think it's going to be Mikal Bridges at the 2 because he has that ability to shoot. At least Josh Jackson is probably going to play the 3, Bender at the 4, and Ayton at the 5. And you have Okubo coming off as your as your scoring option at the point guard. I love that. You still have the mystery in Brandon Knight. You still have TJ Warren, one of my favorite players in the NBA. I think someone asked in the live stream, who's your favorite player that isn't great, but you still hope for and have bigger hopes for? It's TJ Warren. And the other guy you got to throw out there is Marquise Chris. If he's motivated, this guy's still 20 years old and has a ton of athleticism. So this Suns team, I'm a Suns fan. It's been really bleak since Steve Nash and Amar'e Stoudemire left. It's been really bleak since you've gone to the NBA title game in 1993 with Barkley. But things might be on the up and up. You have a young coach, not a young coach, but at least a new coach in Igor that can bring new life to this Suns team. You have a great young GM in McDonough, and you have the talent on the floor to possibly become the next great team in the Western Conference. Because it's going to take a couple years for the Suns to become great. I know some people were like, oh, does this make them a playoff team? No, this team's still going to struggle next year because they still have to gel. But can they be a playoff team for the next 10 years if they're able to keep this core together? Hell yes. Love this draft from the Suns, and people might say, yeah, he gave up the 2021 pick. I don't hate that deal for Philadelphia, but I do think the Suns made the right move getting Mikal Bridges because I absolutely love that starting 5 right now, especially if Bender can develop. But right now, Bender only has to be a 5th option because Mikal can shoot. Josh Jackson can score. We know Devin Booker can score. And Ayton's going to get his points. This guy's going to be a 16-10 guy coming into the NBA. Bender could be a fifth option and just shoot from the outside and really just hone and make sure he becomes a one-skill guy. He doesn't need to be the next great thing in Phoenix. That takes a ton of pressure off of him. And if he can develop that one skill and become elite on offense and become elite from shooting on the outside, that's going to give him spacing for Ayton to work. It's going to give spacing for Josh Jackson to drive. It's going to give spacing for Devin Booker to drive. It's going to give spacing to that pick and roll for Booker and Ayton. I'm absolutely infatuated with this Suns draft, and we'll talk about it a little bit more in the next topic. But let's jump to worst picks because we have to talk about them. We have to be negative. And again, I said this at the top. I don't think any team, I wasn't shocked by anything. Michael Porter Jr. falling was probably the biggest shock, but really outside of that, I wasn't too upset with anything. People were asking me if I didn't like the Mo Bamba fit. I'll talk about that in a little bit, but Mo Bamba, with the position that they were put in, the Magic, where Trae Young's off the board, Luka's off the board, MPJ's on the board, but you have questions about his health. The guy with the highest ceiling there was Mo Bamba. And yes, they have Vucevic, they have Jonathan Isaac, they have Aaron Gordon. They like length. But again, Bamba had the highest ceiling, and I think I would have been upset at the Magic if they didn't go with the guy with the highest ceiling, the guy with the best player on the board. And that was Mo Bamba. So I like that pick for Mo Bamba. A little bit questionable just because of the players they have on roster right now. But again, that was the guy with the most potential. So I don't think that's in the worst picks. But I know some people will probably ask about it. But the first worst pick, I'm sorry to do this to you, Trae Young, but it's Trae Young. Because you might be on the wrong side of possibly the worst trade in history. Because if Luka Doncic hits like I think he might, and again, I'm not trying to bash on Trae Young. I'm not trying to say he's not going to be a great NBA pro. But Trae Young is major boomer bust. And he's not as boomer bust as Michael Porter Jr. because he doesn't have injury concerns. But Trae Young needs to be in the right system. He needs to be in a system that's going to be tailored around him, and he needs guys to take the pressure off him scoring-wise. And we look at Dennis Schroeder. He wants out. He wants to go. And they were, I think, close. I think there was a lot of people saying that they might move Schroeder this draft. They didn't end up doing it. But if he's gone, he was their number one scoring option last year. You become pretty much the number one scorer option because you're going to have the ball in your hand consistently. And John Collins can score. Taurean Prince showed that he can score last year. And you got Kevin Huerter, who can be a nice shooter on the outside. And Amari Spellman could be a nice guy that develops and turn it in. And real quick, I do want to throw out there, Trae Young's comparison was Steph Curry. Kevin Huerter's comparison was like Klay Thompson. Amari Spellman's comparison and kind of build is similar to Draymond Green. You think the Hawks had an agenda? Building the Warriors East. Now, some people were saying, Trae Young is a star, he has star potential, and I'm not disagreeing with that. I mean, and I want to give Trae Young props. This guy was really not on my radar to start the season, and he got himself into, technically a top third pick because Hawks were picking 3, but he's a top 5 pick in the NBA draft. I got to give him credit. I mean, a 6'2" guy with a 6'3" wingspan. I mean, this is like, Russell Wilson going in the first round. I mean, when you're not the size of a prototypical player, you're going to fall. So the fact that, Trae Young went as high as he did, props to him, man. I mean, the guy played his ass off, 27 points, led the NCAA and, points and assists. He had a phenomenal season, but I just look at him and I don't know if this is the right situation for him, and I don't know if this is the right pick for the Atlanta Hawks because I think Luka Doncic would have been able to really build a winning culture in Atlanta. And, again, Trae Young, very boomer bust here. And if he misses out, then this pick is going to look horrible because if Luka Doncic turns into what I think he can, being the safest pick in this NBA draft, and you get a possible, it depends on where this Mavericks pick ends up, but if it's top 10 protected and, Dallas has a really nice season, they go fifth, they finish, get in the playoffs as an 8 seed this year if they're able to get Boogie Cousins, or if it's lottery protected and they finish, 14, and then you get the pick next year and this Mavericks team is able to take the next step, you traded Trae Young and a back half of the lottery, behind the lottery pick for Luka Doncic, where Trae Young, if he's not able to really dominate, get his size, quickness, and athleticism off, and he's just bodied up and put on by hard physical guards, and he's not able to do what he does best, he's out of the league. Then you traded Luka Doncic for a 20th pick. So this is going to look horrible if Trae Young misses out. It's a lot of pressure for this kid. I'm not saying he can't handle it, but I did not like the fit, especially with Luka on the board. Next pick, Kevin Knox. This is nitpicking because a ton of Knicks fans were excited. We're happy that they got Kevin Knox. A lot of Knicks fans were coming to our mock draft saying they like Kevin Knox. And I'm not going to bash it. If you guys like Kevin Knox, then be excited about it. I think this kid has a high ceiling. Some people were saying his max ceiling is Paul George, and I wouldn't disagree with that. He's got length. He's got the ability to shoot. He's a great rise-up shooter already, but he's not consistent. And I think the one thing that might hold him back is the lack of his defensive awareness, and I don't think he's going to be a great ball handler. I don't think he's going to be next point forward. I think he's just going to be a guy that might be a scorer, a slasher, maybe kind of like Tobias Harris. And even then, I don't know if he's going to be a Toby. I don't think he's going to hit Toby level. I think Toby's a really underrated player in the NBA. And with guys on the board that were still left, like Michael Porter Jr. or Shai Gilgeous, my pick for them was Wendell Carter. Obviously, he was off the board. So this is why it's nitpicking, is because I thought the best fit for them was Wendell Carter Jr. He wasn't available. So you went with Kevin Knox. But even then, I like the Bridges better. I like Miles and McHale better for your team, and they were on the board. So Kevin Knox, I don't know if it was the right player. Maybe he's going to thrive. And if you believe he's going to hit that potential, the Knicks are, then it's not going to be a bad pick. But if I was drafting for the Knicks, I would have gone McHale. I would have gone Miles. I might even gone Porter Jr. just because he does have that potential. Some people might say, well, that's going to mess with KP because they think MPJ is going to be a 4. But then again, if you going draft a 3, you have Mikal Bridges who's going to be a starter for the next 10 years in the NBA. You're going to go out and get Miles Bridges, who I think could be a leader on any NBA team and might have the ability to turn into Paul Pierce. So I think that Kevin Knox, really risky pick. If it pays off, Knicks are going to look like geniuses. If they miss out, they might miss out bad because of what Miles, McHale, and MPJ turn into. We're almost done. We're almost out of the camera. I have one more for you, and it's Jerome Robinson of the Clippers. Not saying this kid can't be great. This kid could be the next Steph Curry. I look at him, 6'5", long wingspan, might turn into a good defender, and if he does, he's already a great scorer. And being a 2 on that Clipper team, paired with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who they just got, paired with Danilo Gallinari, paired with Tobias Harris, paired with DeAndre Jordan, if they're able to keep him, and they do keep him, I think Jerome Robinson has the ability to turn into a stud. I'm not going to doubt a Jerry West draft pick, but you had the opportunity to take MPJ, and if MPJ pans out and Jerome Robinson is just okay, you had 2 shots at MPJ and you passed it up. Not saying it's going to be like Steph Curry, where you got Ricky Rubio, and this isn't going to be like Minnesota where you got Ricky Rubio and Johnny Flynn, and Steph Curry was there. You took 2 point guards. Again, you had the ability twice to take Michael Porter Jr. And if you miss out twice and Shai Gilgeous bombs or Jerome Robinson bombs, then you're going to look stupid. Now, again, I understand if you're concerned about his health, but you had the ability twice to take on MPJ, and that kind of gives you the ability to take a risk like MPJ because of his ceiling. So I think it's something in the end where if Jerome Robinson pans out, which I think he can, because I think he's got the skill sets to be an NBA pro, then it's not going to be that bad of a pick. But if MPJ turns into what we think he can be, to his next level, a 6'11", wing that can shoot the ball like he can, this is going to look like a bad pick. So I'm going to use this one because I think Shai Gilgeous is more of a safer pick than Jerome Robinson. And a lot of people were like, who the hell is this? Like when in our live stream, some people were like, who the hell is Jerome Robinson? And there was a Clipper guy when ESPN drafted him just saying, what the hell? I defended the pick on the live stream, but I think I just got to throw this in there and be on the right side of history, because if MPJ turns into what I think he can, then this Jerome Robinson pick is going to look bad. Let me know what you think are the best and worst picks from the 2018 NBA draft.